Well, I doubt you're going to be able to hear me over this. It's Aerodrome Road. This is Colindale, or as it is, Colindale and has been for some time. It's area, a roundabout. And traffic all going that way up Colindale Avenue, which then goes onto the A5, the Aerodrome Road. And then that road down there is called Greyhound Parkway, named in part after Claude Graham White, who was the main founder of the aerodrome that used to be here. Hence it says Aerodrome Road. Now Aerodrome Road, which I'm just about to walk up, is it's an interesting history. God, this road is so busy around here. I remember this area just 20 years ago, 10, 20 years ago, it was nowhere near as busy as, and that's because there's an enormous amount of people living here now, because they've put in so much high density apartments like these. And these have all gone up within the last 5 years, 5 to 10 years, roughly. It's incredible. I mean, there was nothing. There was something to do with the Metropolitan Police. There was some bits of rugby pitches and stuff like that. Anyway, don't know about that. So we're walking up Aerodrome Road. Now, up until probably the 1950s, 60s, this wasn't a main road. This is actually a government road. We'll see over on the other side of the road is what remains of the police college, the Metropolitan Police College. I won't film too much of that because they might wonder what I'm doing. Well, I probably don't care, to be honest with you, these days. But these gates here, which are into Southern Housing's Welcome to Platt Hall and Riddle House, working in partnership with Middlesex University London, it's student accommodation. These gate posts, I can tell you now with absolute authority, these strange sort of modernist gate posts were actually put up in the early 1970s, and it used to say, where it says Welcome to Platt Riddle House, it used to say RAF Hendon, and inside here there was a light. In fact, there probably is a light fishing. No, it's all gone. To light that sign. And this was the main entrance into RAF Hendon after everything changed and the airfield was turned over to housing for the Graham Park estate, which is over there. As you can see, just making it, there is just in the far corner, the original officers' mess, as it's called, basically, where officers could stay. It was originally built as the Aerodrome Hotel in 1917, just when the First World War was going on. I mean, there's a lot of history here, really, to try and convey in a sort of walking video. That wasn't really my point. And in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to be doing a talk about Hendon Aerodrome over at the Horse Hospital in Bloomsbury, where I will be one of the two speakers. The other one will be a chap from Londonist. His name has escaped me, which is a terrible thing to say, but he is one of the editors at Londonist, and he's going to be talking about Croydon, and it's basically talking about the forgotten aerodromes of London, of which Hendon is one. Now, this chain link fence, probably only about 20 years ago, 25 years ago, this was in fact actually just a sort of sheet metal painted green, because this land behind here was the last vestiges of RAF Hendon. It just became a sort of a facility. It wasn't an air base. It was nothing flying in and out of it. In fact, flying ceased in 1957. Now, somewhere along here, I'll have to cross the road. It's actually quite an interesting bit of history, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause to do this. Oh, this is a bit. This is fascinating. This is a type of mural, and this used to be where the Met Police had their sort of mechanics and training on how to fix vehicles. This is, I think, made of fiberglass. Yeah, it's fiberglass, and it's all parts of cars. A lot of it identifiable. That's a Triumph or MG wheel. I know that. Fascinating clutch plates there. This is the best bit. Here, it says Franco-British substation. this is a bit of history. This will probably eventually go at some point, but that is proof that what used to be on this site here was in fact Franco Signs. Franco Signs was a company that made signs, strangely enough, believe it or not. And they were famous actually for doing the illuminated signs at Piccadilly Circus for many years when it was all neon. Gosh, I'm going off on one here. This is all good Northwest London history, by the way. All of this lot here that you can see in front of it was put up from around about 2000, early 2000s. It's Beaufort Park. It's a massive high density development. Probably not as much as high density things are going up at the moment, but 20 years ago it was quite high density, and I think a lot of people were surprised just how much was put in, and it's still really being built. It was a long-term project. This is like a sports stadium for the police. There's not as much here as there used to be for the police. To be honest with you, I don't really know why they are still here. They sure could find somewhere a bit more secluded to do their training, but it's a sort of spiritual base. And in fact, actually, they started here in, I think, in the late 20s, early 30s. So they took over what had been Claude Graham White's London Flying Club and then the London Country Club. He opened it up because basically the aerodrome that was on this side of the road was taken over by the Royal Air Force after the First World War, and Claude Graham White lost it, or didn't lose it, but he lost his claim to it. So he decided to set up on the other side of the road here a club where people could fly, just light aircraft. It didn't really sort of, I was going to say it didn't take off, that's a terrible thing to say. It wasn't a great success, unfortunately. And eventually it all packed up by the late 20s, and it was the Metropolitan Police took it over as their training college. So that road there will take you through to Graham Park Way. And what I was going to be doing today was just going to go to the RAF Museum just to have a look around, take some photographs, you know, just pick up a bit of last minute type sort of inspiration. Not that I really need it because I know the subject pretty well. Now, the next thing I'm going to come up to here, this is what I went and did this actually. There's so much changes quite quickly, you know, there's 1 minute it's there, next minute it's gone. I mean, so much on this stretch of road has gone. But apologies for the sound if there's any wind on the microphone. I really must invest in a little microphone with a sort of fluff ball. Here's the police going really, really fast. I suppose they can do. This is where they do training. Now this is a really important building for me anyway, and to do with the history of aviation in this area. It's one of the few remaining buildings. In fact, I think it's the only remaining building on this side of the road that stays in situ. This building here, with a sort of Dutch gable roof, is used by the police, but is in fact actually was part of Claude Graham White's facility over here, because as well as the country club, in the First World War he had a lot of his factories were either side of the road. He used to make aircraft, the Graham White Aviation Company, and that's why Franco Signs back down there, they took over some of the old factory buildings, as well as people like Standard Telephones. They took over some of the site as well, because basically after the First World War a lot of this stuff just wasn't required anymore. Graham White was trying to continue making things. He had people making furniture. He actually built car bodies. Very enterprising man. Basically he was not one to be beaten, but eventually I think he just decided that enough was enough, and he packed it all in and went off to the south of France, and was involved in property and the selling of speedboats and motor yachts and stuff like that. He was very much a man, a bit of a playboy really, Graham White, but I have to say that I do admire him really. I didn't know him obviously because he died probably 10 years before I was born, but a great man, you know, he achieved a great deal. So there's not much sort of history now left on this side of the road, it really isn't. So what I'm probably going to do is just I don't know, I'll probably pause. I don't know whether I can actually get through to the RAF Museum from this turning here, but yeah, I mean, this is all, it's incredible. That down there all the way through. This is about 20 years of, or so it seems, 20 years of, at least 15 years of building. And I remember these blocks in front I'm looking at now, they've gone up in the blink of an eye, it seems to me. There used to be a little park here, and that's all gone. So, I mean, what gets me is that the names of the roads don't really mean that. They try to actually usually sort of make reference to things that have been here before, but they seem to have stopped doing that. Yeah, there's very little point in sort of shooting anymore here, but actually a little bit further up, it's worth doing, is where there was a railway. Yes, a lost railway. Not only a lost aerodrome, but a lost railway. I think I should shoot that. I'll pause so you're not bored with me walking on talking nonsense. Hang on. So yes, just to pick up, there was the entrance to the country club, and the original building that the Metropolitan Police used as their college. It was about here. It's about where that building with the yellow bit is. That is in fact still the police. So spiritually they're still on the same exact site. There are plenty of pictures of that country club, and you can find some of them actually in my book Flying Up the Edgware Road, which is a chance for me to just chuck in an advert there, probably unnecessarily. There's some really nice illustrations in there of some of the rooms inside the club, you know, like the bar, etc., and the restaurants. Wonderful stuff. Those pictures I got from Barnet Archives. Now, here we go. Let me just zoom in. Right down the end of that road, can you see? Try to focus in. There is a tower. That is the original Graham White watch office. That used to be further down the road here, but they moved it about 25 years ago as part of this whole scheme with this rebuild. The deal was that they could build on the bit of land where the watch office was if they moved it over to the RAF's museum sites. That's what they did. So yeah, actually I'll just keep going on this one because I don't keep pausing all the time. Just try and find things to say. Where I'm coming up to, let's give you the build up to it. Where I'm walking up to, you'll see that there are two railway bridges, and that is the Midland, or used to be the London Midland Scottish line. It's the Midland line, but it's also the Thameslink line that runs in through to St Pancras and wherever else, King's Cross. And back in the latter part of the First World War, a line was taken off this and went through onto the aerodrome, went round the outside of the aerodrome, behind a lot of the buildings, and then onto the Edgware Road to the aircraft factory of the aircraft manufacturing company, otherwise known as Airco. So it was quite late in the war, but of course the thing is that they didn't know the war was going to finish. So it was an idea of being able to get parts for the aircraft companies and spares, etc., through quickly without having to take stuff off trains, so they could bring stuff in from various places from the Midlands and the North, because that line obviously eventually goes up to the North, obviously. So the line that went around, I think, it's hard to tell, I think it was possibly about here, but then it came through onto the other side of the road. It was only there until about 1921, something like that, when eventually I think it was all taken up. But there are pictures of it. If you have a look on Disused Stations, a website, fantastic website, there's a line that says Hendon Factory Line. Okay, but there's another little bit of very niche history which I'm just going to get to. Just going to pause a second. So maybe this is it actually. So this is a service road that takes through to some light industry up there. It's units, you can see Propeller Way, it says. I'll just focus in on that. Propeller Way. And up there is another bit of site which I think is to do with the railway. And I remember this space in between the two railway lines. I'm sure there used to be a garage called Aerodrome Garage, I think, and it was at one point I think Citroen cars were dealt with there, but it will be called Propeller Way because of the association with aircraft history, okay, one way or another. So all of these bridges, these two bridges, this one and this one here, are relatively new. They're rebuilds of older bridges which were really way past it, and I think there was a lot of collisions at the top of the bridge with taller vehicles, because a lot of construction traffic was coming down here when they were building Beaufort Park, the development I mentioned earlier on. I'd imagine the sound quality is really bad, so I do apologise, but I'll just keep carrying on, because I'm just getting to the top of Aerodrome Road. Now, what I'm going to be talking about is actually before my time, because I'm 55, I was born in 1969, but I can tell you with all honesty, because there is a picture somewhere, at the top of this road, back in the 1920s through to the 1940s, there was a sentry point where presumably an RAF guard would be positioned, because there was a gate across this road. Like I said, this was not a public road until probably well into the 1950s or 60s, and then it was opened up. But this was a government road. But more importantly, before it was a road, it was just a track. It was just a track that conveniently went around the outside of the aerodrome, but it had originally just been a space between fields and going underneath the railway, as we saw before. So this sentry hut I mentioned is on the other side of the road, just over there. See where that silver van is? About there was a sentry hut, so a soldier would stand there, well, an RAF police or something of that nature, RAF regiment would be positioned there just to keep an eye, make sure no one was trying to get in. So this is the Watford or Hendon, I think it's Watford Way, and up in the distance there is Greyhound Hill. That has some significance too with the aerodrome. This is Aerodrome Road, there you are. You see? Aerodrome Road. There's a really great picture. It was taken around here with a police sports car with two policemen, open top. It was a Daimler Dart sports car. The photograph was taken in the late 50s, early 60s, and they were just making a turn down into Aerodrome Road, and someone caught it. It's a picture that appears on local Facebook groups quite regularly. So that's Greyhound Hill going up there. Now, could I walk up there? I guess I could. I'm into 17 minutes already, but basically people would watch things happening. Police are really evident in this film, in this video. People would come down from Hendon, old Hendon, and maybe they got the train or they got the bus from Golders Green, and they would come and see the displays at the old London Aerodrome, pre-war and in the interwar period. They would come down this hill, but they would also watch on the cheap the aerial displays taking place at the aerodrome from some fields up on Greyhound Hill. There you are, look. Wonderful. I'm not going to be able to get across this road, so it's probably a good time for me to sort of pause. I could do a separate video which is about the RAF Museum, but I don't know, have I done that before? Really noisy. But yeah, basically people would come down Greyhound Hill, but the A41, the Watford Way, which is what this is, didn't exist. So it basically, the road sort of bent round. It didn't go this way up to Mill Hill. It just carried on down that way. There's a subway there I could go down. So yeah, people would go down here when it was just a track and it wasn't a road. This is before the RAF took it over. And they would walk round through to the aerodrome entrance, which was where I started my video. So yeah. So it's probably a good time for me to sort of stop, because it's quite a long video already. It's another one of these things where I just thought, right, let's just film this now, as you do. I've got my phone, let's do it. I don't think there's much to be ventured from me going up onto Sunny Hill Fields, which is what it's called up there, because all you're going to see is just all this stuff that's been built. So I'll leave it there. My apologies for poor sound quality, as ever. Thank you for watching. As ever, I've mentioned this before, these videos are not supposed to be works of art. They're not supposed to be major historical, documents. They are really just notebooks, visual notebooks. An opportunity just for me to ramble on and explain a few things to people who don't perhaps know about the history of the area. And for those people who do know the history of the area, you can pick out all my mistakes if you want. Hopefully I haven't made too many. So that's it. So the ghost of the sentry box on the other side of the road there, and if I was here 100 years ago, a military man would be asking me what I was doing, shooting some film on your device. There we go. Thanks for watching.